Okay, so this is my 1975 Mercedes Benz 450SL that I worked on as my senior project. I acquired the car in early August of 2017, and ever since then I've just been working on it. So when I first got the car, it was not in drivable condition. The car did crank over, however, the belts were completely shot. I have pictures in that in my work blog. And the brakes did not work at all, and also there were some exterior problems, such as the side running boards were completely faded. The driver's side inner running board was covered in rust, and the brakes did not work at all. So from there I just got working on it. So the first thing I did was I started with the belts. So, I'll show you what I did there. So with this car, since this is an older car, there's 4 belts. We have the alternator belt right here, 2 power steering belts, and then an AC belt, which is located right down there. So first I had to take off this shroud, the fan, and then these hoses right here. So then I just start with the alternator belt, loosen up the adjusting bolts on the back, one right there, one on the bottom left. Then I came over to the power steering belt, same thing. The adjusting bolt was actually located down there in the bottom left hand corner. And then I just loosened up these other 3 bolts located on the power steering. And the AC belt was actually pretty easy. There's just one bolt located right in the middle, and I just had to loosen that one up and it popped right off. So it was basically an all-day event doing the belts, just because I've never done this before, and I figured out that it was mainly just like a big puzzle, and it was enjoying, but it was also kind of painful. So from there I rode the car for about a day, and I really shouldn't have, because this car basically had 0 brakes. But within that day, the alternator belt and the AC belt actually popped off. I was able to get the car home, so the next day I went out and purchased a new alternator belt, new AC belt, and I found that the main problem was that the AC belt and the alternator belt were most likely rubbing against each other. So I had to adjust these pulleys right here and then one in the middle, so they weren't rubbing together. And then after I fixed that, I cranked the car up, everything was sounding good, it was running good. So I turned my attention to the brakes, so I'm able to stop. The brakes wouldn't activate until I pushed the pedal all the way to the ground, and I didn't know why. I thought that the brakes just needed a whole new brake job or something wrong with it. So I opened up the brake reservoir first, realized there was no brake fluid in it. So I figured that it was probably leaking somewhere. So I went and got some brake fluid, poured it in, realized that it was all leaking out within a minute, and I didn't know where the leak was coming from. So I checked all 4 tires, checking around the rotors, checking around the brake pads, calipers, all that good stuff. And I asked my product facilitator, or I told him that I couldn't find where it was leaking. He probably told me it was leaking in the master cylinder, or it was leaking from the master cylinder into the booster. So I took the master cylinder off, and I looked in the booster, and there's a bunch of brake fluid in there. So that meant it was a bad master cylinder. Got a dropper and squeezed all that bad brake fluid out, and I ordered a new cylinder, and it wasn't that hard putting that in until I had to put this bottom fluid line in, this bottom brake fluid line. And the only reason that one was hard is because I couldn't get it to screw in properly because of the threads, and I just couldn't see it, so I didn't know where I was lining it up. So after about 45 minutes of just trying to screw it in there, I just gave up and took off the booster nuts and unscrewed these 2 fluid lines, and decided to screw in this bottom fluid line in first, and then move to the booster nuts, and then screw in these 2 fluid lines. So after that was in there properly, I poured some brake fluid in there. From there, I poured the brake fluid in there, and then I decided to bleed the brakes because there was a bunch of oxygen in the brake lines, which is horrible for the brakes. So I started with back right tire, back left tire, front right, front left. So from there, took it for a ride for a couple days. It was stopping accordingly. It was running good. Everything was running strong. So I decided to turn to the cosmetics. So when I got the car, like I said, the exterior running boards had faded to like a base. I guess it was the base color yellow, and it was very splotchy, and it just looked awful. I mean, this car with this paint job, it's actually in very good condition for how old it is, and it just took it away. So I decided to get some paint and spray paint the exterior running board to matte black, which is the factory color, and I made sure to cover up all the trim and anything else that could potentially have some overspray. So I just made sure that I didn't mess any of that up, and it was the same problem on the other side. So I went through the same process of cleaning it and then covering everything up and then spray painting it the same length away so it didn't look so the paint didn't look uneven. So then, like I said, there were some rust issues on this front running board right here. And on this front running board, I guess there was a leak, and the water in the metal just started to act up, and then the rubber mat that was supposed to be here had just disintegrated basically. So I had to scrape all of that off, get some rust killer. I had to cover up all this paint and just spray it, kill the rust. And I painted it black, and now I'm still looking for a rubber mat just because they're super hard to find since this car is, 43 years old. So from there, I was basically done with the car. I have a little bit over 27.5 hours on it. And I'll basically just crank it up for y'all. It was a great project car. It was a great first car to work on. I did have some struggles with it. However, I was able to overcome those and really enjoy this process of working on it and getting it in the condition it's in now. And that is my senior project.